Hi, welcome to a conversation. This is a little bit different than what we're used to on my YouTube channel for sure. It's not going to be football related. This is much more humanitarian related. And I have with me a great friend and one of the smartest, well-read people that I know, and that's Hratch. Hratch, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, John. Don't play me up like that.
Oh, I'm doing it, man.
You always wanna, lower the expectations.
I see. I'm bad at that. I really am bad at that. And what we're going to be doing today, we're just going to have a conversation. And this conversation is something that needs to be had across the world. And the whole goal of this is one, awareness, but two, education. Because there's just a lot going on right now around the world. And one of the major crises in the world currently has to do with Armenia and Azerbaijan. And so what we're going to attempt to do is just talk back and forth. Usually Hratch and I do this at a bar or at one, over at my house or something along those lines. And we just really want to get the word out for what's going on right now and dispel a lot of misinformation that's out there as well. So as we talk, just understand the goal here is awareness, education, and just understanding what's happening. So Hratch, let me start with this. Okay.
Right.
Give me, for somebody that doesn't know what's going on, spoiler alert, I'm non-Armenian. Walk me through briefly what is ARSOC and what is the background between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
To understand that, you'd have to go way back in history. That's why you stressed the briefly. I know I can go on and on about any subject, just ramble on. But I think to sort of unpack this really otherwise confusing, issue and region, we have to lay down a couple of principles to which we'll frequently return. There's an anecdote about two of the Greek city-states that Plutarch, who's one of my favorite authors, writes about how the Spartans are in a land quarrel with their neighbors and rivals, the people of Argos, the Argives, and they're going back and forth, giving arguments about who actually owns the land. And then the Argives, well, they make a brilliant argument. The law seems to be on their side. It's been on their part of the, of their city for a very long time. And then they feel like themselves that they've made a better case, that it belongs to them. And then the Spartan commander, who was in the argument with them, whose name was Lysander, he puts his hand on his sword and draws it, and he says, "He who is master of this talks best about boundaries of land." Unfortunately, that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter who's right, who is on the right side of history. Often it's just who has more power, who has more influence. That person is generally who comes out on top. And so in this conflict, on the one side, you have Armenia, which is a landlocked Christian democracy in a part of the world where there's not many democracies or Christians. On the other side, you have Azerbaijan, which is a Turkic, mostly Muslim, oil-rich dictatorship, essentially. Although I don't like the word dictator here. I don't like the word because a dictator is someone in the Roman Empire who legally has office for 6 months during a time of war and then he leaves. So generally people will say like Azerbaijan is a dictatorship. Actually, it's not. It's actually just a tyranny is what it is. He's an Eastern despot. So behind Azerbaijan, you have Turkey, who's its Turkic big brother in the region, standing, and helping them in a few different ways that we'll talk about. But Armenia has Russia behind it because it's its nearest Christian and strongest country that could come to its aid, since Armenia has been at conflict with both Turkey and Azerbaijan for quite a while. And so Armenia and Azerbaijan are fighting like the Spartans and the Argives over a strip of land that one side says belongs to them, the other side says belongs to them, and no one can come to a conclusion but I would say the side that has the power on their side, the sword in hand in this case, is Azerbaijan. And so Armenians are doing everything they can to make the best argument they can that that land belongs to them, but you know, that often doesn't work out on the side of, you know, historicity or who's actually right. But in the end, who's more powerful, you know?
And that's the thing, you know, as you're laying this out, you know, we have Armenia, and then we have Azerbaijan, and we have this strip of land in the middle, which is known as Artsakh or Koraba. And the whole idea is this, you know, I love that you brought up the whole Roman, the power, who holds the sword wins, because this issue, here's the deal. If you step back and look at it, we're going to get into the history. We'll jump into that. But the people, the population with this land that is fighting, it is 99% Armenian population filled. There are no Azeris in this land currently. Now, is that a new thing? Like, because again, you have Azerbaijan attacking this territory, which we'll get into the international claim on who it belongs to, whatever. But why are there no people from Azerbaijan in this territory that's disputed that they're trying to take over? What happened there?
In the early 90s, after the Soviet Union fell, both Armenia and Azerbaijan were Soviet states. And so during the Soviet Union, there were population exchanges. This was the Soviet way of breaking ethnic homogeneity and making sort of lands easier to control by mixing them up. Also, it's a part of their ideology that everyone in the Soviet Union was brothers and sisters, and so they would do this. They would take a population from their country and like send them by train to another country. They did that all over. That happened in where Armenia and Azerbaijan were. Even before that, there were there was a population exchange where there were. Well, first of all, we have to say who Azerbaijanis are. Azerbaijanis are Turks who live in the Caucasus. We call them Azeris, for, you know, people from Azerbaijan are called Azeris now, but really they're just Turks who live in the Caucasus. So when Turkey teams up with Azerbaijan to fight Armenia, really it's just two sides. What do they call them? One nation, two different names. So they're essentially just Turks. So
you have little Armenia right in between them. It's almost like there's sandwiched between these two larger countries.
Turkic, yeah, much larger, much more populous states. One of which committed genocide against Armenians in 1915. That one being Turkey. But since there were empires, so Armenia is like the meeting place between two empires, and so there you have sort of, what's the word? Marbled. You know how meat is marbled? You have a little bit of meat, a little bit of fat, meat, fat, meat, fat. That's kind of how it was. So when the Ottoman Empire broke apart, you had a separating of the people into their separate nation states, so that you had Armenians claiming Armenia for themselves after the genocide, after World War I, and then the Turks in the Caucasus taking land for themselves, and then both of them being swallowed up by the Soviet Empire, and then a piece, that land that we're talking about, the Artsakh, Armenians call it Artsakh, and the rest of the world knows it as Nagorno-Karabakh. Stalin gave that strip of land to Azerbaijan in order to placate Turkey, because the Turks and the Russians had been at each other's throats for a very long time. And then so this was his way of throwing them a bone. And so he took
Stalin's a stand-up guy who was definitely for peace.
Exactly, of course, yeah. Hence his name, Stalin, you know. So he gives that territory, which for, I think, since the medieval period and even before that, were host to Armenian kingdoms. So you had Armenians living in that area, you had other people living in that area, but Stalin decided, in order to placate Turkey, to give that to Azerbaijan, make it a part of Azerbaijan. Also at that time, you had the creation of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is not the name of a country per se. It's the name of a region of Iran, because you have Armenia here, and then you have Azerbaijan here, and then Iran to the south east, and then so the part that's currently Azerbaijan is actually northern Iran. It's the name of a region of Iran. So it's almost as if let's say China took over the U.S. and then made made Los Angeles its own country. For whatever its political reasons were. So Los Angeles has never been a country, but it was made a country by this foreign power. So the Turks in the Caucasus who lived there, who were called Caucasian Tatars or Tatars, which is a Turkic race. So these Caucasian Tatars were given their own country, which was a region of northeastern Iran. And so that's how they come into existence in 1918. Stalin gives them that chunk of land, which had been inhabited by Armenians for thousands of years. And once the Soviet Union collapsed, that chunk of land, which had been inhabited by Armenians, is now in Azerbaijan proper. And then the Armenians who lived there decided they wanted to have a vote to leave Azerbaijan and to join Armenia, which, obviously Azerbaijan didn't like. And so for about 30 years now, it's been trying to get back that Armenian populated piece of land that voted by, what's the name of the process? Self-determination. It's the self-determination of the people in that area.
This all goes back to kind of Woodrow Wilson after, World War I and all those things, and the Armenian map and all those things, right?
Exactly. So the self-determination for colonialized people, people who'd been small ethnic minorities, for them to have their own states and not be part of a giant empire. So that's the background of it, and there's been 30 years of fighting because of Stalin's gerrymandering of the region, in order to placate Turkey. So
okay, so now we have a little bit of a glimpse. Obviously, it's much more complex than what we just went through, and there's a lot more, and we'll jump back to the past. Let's jump to the present. 2 weeks ago, and man, I think I apologize. I think I even called it a conflict earlier, which this is not a conflict, right?
Nope.
So what's happening now, let's jump to 2 weeks ago, where the bombing of civilian populations started taking place. Let's go there and help me understand where this is taking place and why.
Yeah. So in Artsakh currently, or Nagorno-Karabakh, on September the 27th, Azerbaijan fired artillery that killed 18 people and injured many more. Armenia responded and killed 5 Azerbaijanis. Azerbaijan declared war, as you said. It's not a conflict. It's not just some border skirmish. They declared war. And Azerbaijan claims that Armenia fired first, but that makes absolutely no sense. I want to
spend a lot of time on this section here, on why it is not a border conflict or whatever. So help us understand why it makes no sense for Armenia to start this battle, and why this is 100% just a unilateral power grab.
That's also a complex question. So Armenia's military budget, I think their total GDP is something like, what is it? Well, it's 5% of their total GDP. I think they spend, Armenia spends 600 million a year on military defense. Azerbaijan's GDP is, I think, 47 billion, and it spends 5%. So it has 2.5 billion on its military. So 600 million versus 2.5 billion. Azerbaijan has a population of 10 million, and Armenia has a population of 3 million. And so Armenia has the land. They live on the land. They don't want any more of Azerbaijan's land, but Azerbaijan thinks that land is theirs, and they're continually trying to take it back. So it doesn't make any sense for Armenia to be starting a war in which they have everything to lose and nothing to gain. Azerbaijan has something to gain. They think they own that land because Stalin gave it to them, and that's really the beginning and the end of it. They think it's theirs because Stalin, it was a part of theirs for 100 years, and they want it back. Now, the internationally, it's recognized as Azerbaijani territory, so they can't have it both ways. You can't have it be legally yours internationally, and then say that you're not starting a war in order to take back what you think is yours. Armenians have what they think is theirs, and they're not starting a war so that with a much more wealthy country with a much bigger military, just so that they could lose the little that they have. So the thing with the international law, technically, Azerbaijan, the world recognizes that part of that strip of land as Azerbaijan, but international law also has a provision of self-determination for people who live in an area that they feel unsafe being a part of. So if, for example, if those Armenians were to be swallowed up by Azerbaijan, that territory were to be swallowed up by Azerbaijan and be ruled by Azerbaijan, they would be in direct threat of being completely wiped out. Azerbaijani officials, more often than you'd think, say things like, for example, in 2005, this is real, the mayor of Baku, which is the capital of Azerbaijan, he was entertaining a delegation of Germans in his city, and the issue of Armenians came up, and Artsakh, and so he said, I don't want to misquote it, so try. What did he say? He says,
okay.
yeah, he says you Nazis, you in the 30s and 40s eliminated the Jews. You should completely understand what we're trying to do with the Armenians. We're trying to do the same thing. You should know. So they say things like that. So the fact that Azerbaijan is backed by Turkey, which committed genocide 100 years ago, and is now providing weapons and sending over jihadist mercenaries from Syria to fight Armenians in Artsakh, makes Armenians think that they are under threat of a second genocide. And you could understand why, because Turkey's involved, and Azerbaijan has always aspired to ethnically cleanse Armenians from that land. And so that's where we stand. So Armenians have the right under another provision in international law to say, we don't want to be ruled by a tyranny that hates us and wishes to wipe us out. So that's another thing with international law, is that international law is just another arena in which the powerful can play, games with one another. Really, that's essentially what it is. So Azerbaijanis don't talk about the fact that when their ancestors 1,000 years ago, not even 1,000 years ago, was it 1,000 years? When they came from Central Asia and they raped and pillaged their way across several countries and conquered the land that they now occupy, they don't invoke international law and the fact that people didn't want them to rule over them. So they're invoking international law now because it suits their case, but if it didn't, they wouldn't. And so it all, again, boils down to power moves. And so that's where we are.
It's interesting, listening to you go through this, because I hate to say this, it reminds me, of selfish kids in middle school playing on a playground, right? I want the ball. I go take the ball. Then I make rules up for how it will be played. And then I tell the people that we're playing with it, you can't play with us anymore.
Yep.
And, I did a lot of research, over the past couple of weeks on this, just because I'm trying to understand it as best I can. And why should I care, right? Here's the idea. With humanity in general, why should I care about what's happening all the way across the world? Why does this matter? And I think that we're kind of in this, this is a big reason why I teach, and you as well, is this empathic response to history to empower the present. And, you go through the genocide and you talk about these people who were subjected to the worst atrocities back in 1915. And Hitler learned this and copied this playbook that took place by the Turks against the Armenians. Hitler, he referenced it several different times and used that same thing against the Jewish people. And now you have people with the exact same philosophy and the exact same process. And again, one of the core tenets of fascism is to take land from an ethnic minority and to use that for your own, further empire building, whatever else, it doesn't matter. But that's what's happening here. And the terms that are used by the Jews or the Turks back in the day are the same terms that are being used now, and that it's an Armenian occupation, right? It's not even we're giving them any type of validity or self-worth. They don't even belong on the land. And it's not even they're trying to take control of the land. They're wanting to remove and kill. That's what this is. And that's why it's different than a quote unquote conflict. This is all about targeting an entire race, an entire Christian group, a religious minority, to take it all. And again, if you think that this is over just one strip of land, it's not, because it's being funded by Turkey, which has it doesn't even touch the border of where Artsakh is.
Well, you're talking about empires. That is at the heart of it. There's something, there's a geopolitical idea that not a lot of Americans are aware of called pan-Turkism. Pan-Turkism is a kind of Turkish manifest destiny. In the late 1880s, these Turkish intellectuals came up with the idea that they would like to form a extensive empire stretching from Turkey through what is now Armenia, through Azerbaijan, over the Caspian, into Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, all the way to the borders of China. Because all those people in Central Asia are technically Turkic people. So they want a pan-Turkic empire with no Armenians in the middle. It's a form of Turkish nationalism, pan-Turkish nationalism that sees no room for anybody in those lands who is not supposedly Turkic. But we'll talk about the supposed Turkishness in Turkey and Azerbaijan too a little bit later if you want.
I want to jump into that.
Yeah.
That was the next place I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
Your studies and how you go in through the DNA and the ancestry and all those different things. What does it mean to be a quote unquote Turk? You gave us a couple tidbits to kind of how they stretched across Asia, but what is the actual makeup of a Turkish person?
Yeah. So you believe in archaeology, right?
Oh, big time.
Yeah. So archaeology is essentially just digging in the earth to potentially find artifacts or bones or whatever that help you learn about the past. They give you information. DNA and genetics is the same thing. A lot of people are sort of afraid of it because they're afraid of the implications for various reasons, but it's essentially the same thing. Genetics is just blood archaeology. Instead of digging in the earth to find information about past civilizations and who you are and where we come from, genetics is digging in blood and bone of living human beings. So it's one component of our arsenal of evidence that we can marshal to sort of make sense of what's happening in that part of the world. So I would say especially important for Armenians, because Armenians are constantly having to prove to their Turkic neighbors that an Armenia exists and it existed and has a right to exist currently in the Caucasus and in Western Asia. I'll get to Turks in a second, but Turks and Azerbaijanis, they have this sort of propaganda that they like to put out, that no such thing as the nation of Armenia has ever existed. Armenians came from here or there, or the Russia set up Armenia in the Caucasus as a proxy, but no such nation existed. They sort of just take what I said in the beginning, the fact that Azerbaijan wasn't a nation, but which is just a fact. It's just a fact. It was just an area of Iran. They hear that and they try to go tit for tat and look for things that make Armenia, not a country. Whatever Armenia is, it's a country, and the people have been there for 3,000 years. And this has been proven through genetic research. So you know this, you've seen Armenians. Armenians come in a lot of shapes and sizes and colors. You'll have your Irish looking Armenian, and then you'll have like an Armenian who looks almost Indian. And then you have something in the middle, like sort of a mean between the two. The funny thing about Armenians is that genetic research has found that Armenians form from the year 3000 BC to the year 2000 BC, in which various Eurasian tribes mixed with one another. And then once the Bronze Age civilizations fell around 1200 BC, the people who are today Armenians, that mixed race of Bronze Age Eurasian people, stopped intermixing with any other tribes or nations around them from 1200 BC until now. So from 1200 BC to now, Armenian DNA has been very stable and hasn't really taken any other foreign admixture since the beginning, mixture. And that's true for all races. There's no such thing as pure race. That's what makes people really uncomfortable with genetics, because it gets into race and what that means, right. And does that make one race different than the other? But really, races exist, but it's the myth is a pure race. There's no such thing as a pure race. But race exists, and the Armenian race has existed for 3,000 years in that territory since the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age was when they were taming horses still. A horse wasn't even domesticated yet. So Armenia is real. You have references to Armenia from Herodotus and Xenophon, and tablets from the Persian Empire and Darius the Great. Before that, from the Assyrians. Armenia is a thing. The interesting thing is that the Turkish race is a thing. Turks are a thing. But the weird thing is that there are no Turks, or very few Turks in Turkey, which sounds strange. But DNA testing has revealed only in the last few years that there is only in Asia Minor, to the east of Greece and to the west of let's say Iran, in Asia Minor, where Turks live currently, there's only 10% Turkic blood in the people who live there, whereas the remaining 90% of the people who live in that in Asia Minor, in Turkey, are either Armenian. There's millions of people who are genetically Armenian who live in Eastern Turkey, or Greek, or Iranian. And then so that's been happening these last few years. Multiple articles coming out in the Turkish press, one recently in 2019 with the headline, genetic testing is undermining the Turkish identity. So Turks are, they used to think that they were a nation and a race and a proud race, but really they're just Greeks and Armenians and Kurds who live in that part of the world, with a 10% admixture of people from Central Asia who speak a Central Asian language and who've adopted Islam.
And it kind of makes sense with it being, I mean, if you look to the fall of Constantinople, changing that to Istanbul, that was the gateway to the East. I mean, you're talking about one of the most highly trafficked, populated areas for the past 1,000 years plus. It does kind of make sense, especially with the converging of two different worlds. It's kind of where Europe meets Asia, with the Middle East and everything. And so I kind of get it. It makes sense that there's much more than you look at Armenia, surrounded by mountains, almost completely set to the side. It's just different. And so again, I want you to continue with this. Okay. The historical context of what it is from the Turkish origins, where they came from to where they expanded to, I think leads to that. Walk us through that just a little bit.
Yeah, Central Asia, the Far East, not the Near East, not the Middle East, the Far East. So both the Turks in Turkey and the Turks in Azerbaijan, they claim ancestry from their glorious ancestors, the Mongols. They're proud of it, but who swept over what was then the Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and they took it over Constantinople fell in 1453, and the Ottoman Turks established an Ottoman Empire. And these were people from Mongolia, but they were a minority. They were a very small minority. And so over the hundreds of years that they were there, they slowly became subsumed in the native population of Asia Minor, being Greeks in the West, and other people like Phrygians and Carians, and the other people who people from Cilicia and Armenians and Iranians and today's Kurds. So they were subsumed by them. The very small number of conquerors were subsumed by them. It's almost like you have a bucket of water and you drop a little bit of paint in it. The much more numerous water, it's not going to color the bucket of water. That's what happened. But they adopted Islam. They had their own language. And so there was a sort of a cultural Turkishness that pervaded the area. And so the natives of the land sort of spoke Turkish and adopted Islam, but they remained the same people genetically that they've always been. When they do DNA tests on people from today's Western Turkey, the people in Western Turkey are most related to people in like Sardinia and like certain parts of Italy. Because then this goes back to what the Greek legends were about the Trojans who went from they fled the destruction of Troy, which was in Western Asia, which is now Turkey, fled to Italy and founded Rome. It turns out all that stuff was true. There was a grain of truth in it. So, but those weren't Turks. Those weren't people from Central Asia who look Mongolian or Chinese or Korean or Japanese. Totally different people who a group of them who were great horsemen conquered that area, were subsumed into the population, and it was Islam that kept them together, Islam and the Turkish language. When the Turkish identity currently is now falling apart because of genetics, and more Turks every day are finding out that they are not only related to, but they themselves are almost 100% either the accursed Greeks or the hated Armenians, and that Turkish identity has fallen apart in Asia Minor. Only now is the leader of Turkey, President Erdogan, he's turning Turkey, which used to be secular, more and more Islamist, more and more Muslim, which it was not before, because it's only Islam now that can keep Turks together, because their identity, their ethnic identity, has evaporated because of genetics.
It's interesting, man. And, teaching world history and U.S. history and going through this stuff, I love the way you put it together, man. You're good at what you do. Now, let's pause from the history. Let's jump back to current. It seems almost like, especially countries around Armenia, are almost picking sides, right? And Armenia is coming up on the short end of this. A lot of it has to do with economic reasons. They just don't have much to offer anybody, so that's what it is. So on one side, you have Azerbaijan and Turkey for sure. Now, you mentioned Russia earlier. What's Russia's current stance on this war?
So Russia,
would you call it a war? How would you call this? What do you call this? Don't call it a conflict. It's not really a war because it's so one-sided.
Yeah, well, I would say, well, it currently is. You have both sides fighting pretty fiercely at this point. So I would say it is a war, a full-scale war between two former Soviet states, because Russia has so much influence in both of these countries, because they're in Russia's sphere of influence, and they're former Soviet satellite states. They sell arms to both countries. So despite the fact that people say that Russia is on Armenia's side, and they're Armenia's ally, they're the only thing that frightens the wolves away from the flock. Russia is. Historically, Russia is the only thing it has prevented Turkey, genocidal Turkey, from rolling over Armenia. And so for its own interests, really. It's not because they care about Armenia, but because if Turkey gets a foothold in the Caucasus, remember Pan-Turkism takes place. They have a highway to the Caspian, from the Caspian straight into Central Asia. So if the Turks ever got their hands on Armenia, the Russians would lose, and the Chinese. So there's an interesting, so we'll talk about Russia, continue talking about Russia, but an interesting little side note here is that China may weigh in on Armenia's side, because currently, you know what's happening in China. The Uyghurs, the Central Asian, these are Turkic people who look, actually, this is interesting. If you look at a picture of a Uyghur, type in Uyghur, and then the person's face who you see looks Mongolian, looks East Asian. And then if you Google a Turk from Turkey, they'll look like me, because that's what they are. They're genetically Armenian. Whereas these Uyghurs are actually Central Asians. They're actual Turks, genetically Turks in Central Asia. China is putting these people into concentration camps, right? They're moving these people into re-education camps because they don't like the fact that they use an Arabic alphabet like the Turks used to do before they modernized and switched to a Latin alphabet. They're religious, which communist China doesn't like. And so they're putting them into these re-education camps. And so Turkey is actually at odds with China now and is trying to stand up for its Turkic brethren. So Turkey's not happy with China. And so China may very well come in on Armenia's side, because if Turkey and Azerbaijan beat Armenia out and Armenia ceases to exist, it'll be a problem for China too. But Russia, it almost plays both sides in the conflict. It sells arms to Azerbaijan, but it also sells arms to Armenia. There's a Russian military base in Armenia, without which probably Turkey would, feel emboldened to, try its hand at taking Armenia. Azerbaijan would try its hand at taking Armenia, but the Russian base there is a real deterrent to both of them. So Russia has a base there. On the other hand, it sort of plays both sides in the Armenia and Azerbaijan conflict. We're led to believe that they help Armenia in ways that we don't know. And so I don't know about that. I'm not privy to that secret knowledge, but some people claim that that's true. I don't see it in the present conflict. They've played a very hands-off role currently, but that's where it stands with Russia. Armenia also has very good relations with Europe and America historically. You were saying, why should you as an American care? Historically, Armenia and America's really helped Armenia out during the First World War. Americans raised the equivalent of $1.25 billion to help Armenian and Greek and Assyrian refugees fleeing the massacre in the Ottoman Empire. So Armenians, as you know, have a long memory. I remember what happened 3,000 years ago. I remember what the good America did to Armenia at that time, and no Armenian will forget that. And so it just so happens that Russia's right there. Europe and America are too far away to really weigh in on Armenia's side. So Russia's the only game in town for Armenia, really.
But unfortunately, that's not the case for Azerbaijan. It seems like they have a long list because they have money. You talked about oil rich, they're able to buy. What are some other major countries that they are purchasing these drones? That's the thing. This is a war of predominantly an infantry, right? On Armenia's side, yes, they do have some advanced weapons, but the drone strikes seem to have gone through the roof in the past week. Where are they getting these drones from, man?
Yeah, so besides Turkey, which is helping Azerbaijan, by strategically, and I think they're giving them F-16s. And then also Turkey is, as I said, recruiting jihadists from Syria to go kill Armenians, which is also worrisome. And also Azerbaijan in the region is friendly with and sells 40% of its gas to Israel. Israel buys, I think, 40% of its gas from Azerbaijan, and sells them high-tech drone military. This is not like civilian stuff. This is cutting-edge drone technology that is currently killing Armenians in Artsakh, and with Israeli aid. So there are Israelis on the ground in Azerbaijan who are helping them use this cutting-edge technology to kill Armenians. Now, that's doubly bad because Israel exists because of the Holocaust. It's a country that lost 6 million people in World War II. And you would think that a country that has gone through that would not be supplying cutting-edge technology to a country that wants to continue and finish the job of the second Armenian genocide. So the president of the breakaway Republic of Artsakh brought this up in a press conference just a week ago because it so irked him, the fact that there was Israeli technology being used to kill Armenians. And he brought it up, and he said that the Israelis, the government, that is, which is quite right-wing, was helping the Azerbaijanis spill Armenian blood. And a group of Israeli academics got together, and they signed a petition. They submitted it to the Knesset that the right and moral thing would be not to sell this tyranny in the Caucasus weapons with which to kill people with, and to wipe out a whole nation. I believe the Knesset, or their Supreme Court, the Israeli Supreme Court, said, no, we have contracts, we have to fulfill these contracts. And so the sales will be going on. And to come back to our, the very first principle we started with, whoever has sword in hand is gonna win. It doesn't matter who's right. It doesn't matter who suffered. It doesn't matter what's true or what's just. The thing that's really winning so far, and what's gonna win in the end, is might. Because from the beginning until now, every conflict on earth, might makes right, unfortunately.
So, all right, let's jump to where we are currently, the United States. There's no way Armenia can win this war with things the way that they are going now. There's just no way. They're going to have to get aid or help or empathy from somewhere. And I think the United States is one of those possibilities. So as an American, as a non-Armenian, man, how can I help? What's my role in this? What is the typical, a white guy from Dallas, Texas, who never met an Armenian?
Yeah.
Well, what's he do?
Well, what you're doing, John, right now is a huge help. Just, the saying, knowledge is power. Me and you are powerless in every way, except for the fact that we know some things, right? So if we can use some of the things we know, such as the fact that there are no Turks in Turkey, I always hammer that in. By the way, I don't know who wants to hear that less, Armenians or Turks, because for Armenians, they think Turks are this foreign barbarians who came in and took over from Central Asia. They're really not. They're genetically They're genetically Greeks. They're genetically the people who've always lived there. And then Turks don't want to hear that because they hate Armenia. If a Turk ever found out he was Armenian, he would have an existential crisis like you would not believe. But just knowledge, the truth. It's true. It's not more powerful than the sword, but it has in the right place at the right time, in the right brain, might do some good. So what me and you are doing right now, I think is very helpful, and I thank you for it. What the U.S. can do, the U.S. is a part of a group called the Minsk Group. It's chaired by the US, France, and Russia. It's been around since the early 90s. Their mission is to resolve the Nagorno-Karabakh / Artsakh border conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And historically, whenever the US has thrown its weight behind ceasing hostilities and bringing it back to status quo, they've succeeded. So I think there was a flare-up 10 or so years ago, or maybe less. I can't keep track of my flare-ups, but John Kerry, when he was a part of the Obama administration, was sent there, and as soon as he went, he sat both sides down, and the fighting ended like that. Magic. But since Trump got in office, because of his America First slogan, first of all, it's not America First. It's very selectively America First. Pompeo came out and said, that's not our fight, referring to the Artsakh conflict, war at this point. He said, it's not our fight. He literally said, I wish the Armenians luck. He literally just said, good luck to you. I hope you defend yourself. So Armenia's all by itself. They're not getting any aid from the American government currently.
And here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
You know, you just brought up Kerry.
Yeah.
The United States didn't send troops. It literally just took
one
guy to go over there and say, stop it. And then it stopped because the financial impact of the United States across the globe. And whenever we were talking about President Trump, I would make the argument, he's the most pro-Turkish president in the history of the United States. And I don't even think there's a close second. You look at, the people that were indicted for his campaign, all of them, money laundering, connections to Turkey, espionage in Turkey. I mean, multiple. Yes. And so for Trump, he loves it. You can go back to the Syrian conflict whenever he turned over all the military bases to Turkey and to the Russians, right? He is not for Armenia. Now, you brought up Kerry under the Obama administration. The only person of any political power whatsoever that has come out and actually spoken up for the Armenians is Joe Biden. He says he came out and basically tweeted Trump needs to step up in this conflict and get them to peace talks, whatever else, not necessarily picking any side, but just peace, which is what the Armenians are calling for, peace. Now, I don't know. What else about the current governmental political structure in the United States has to do with this? Is there anything else, or is this or is it covered?
Well, I was going to say, with Biden Harris, they came out with a joint statement that asked President Trump, to get in between the two sides and, like Kerry did, calm things down, which would be good. Except that a lot of Armenians don't trust Joe Biden. They don't trust Obama because, and there's good reason for it. So most Armenians are as cynical as I am, and they don't trust Biden. They trust Biden about as far as they can throw him. Obama has his own problems. Obama got into office, not exclusively. He didn't get into office because of this, but he literally promised Armenians that he would, once he was president, he would, without a doubt, do what is right and just and speak the truth and do what George Bush didn't and say the word genocide as soon as he got in. And as soon as he got in, he said it was not a genocide. He started using the Armenian word for genocide, which was a really weaselly way to get around it. He used the Armenian words medzierren, which Armenians don't even use. So he found a way to get around it. So Armenians are really cynical when it comes to politicians making promises about anything regarding them. And so I'm one of them. I honestly, I don't believe Joe Biden. It's more than what Trump is doing, but I think a lot of Armenians are like, you know what, at least Trump is not lying to us. He's outright saying, I don't give a damn about you people. And they're like, you know what? I like that guy's honesty. And also a lot of them like his politics, but I suppose. But like I told you, like people's political opinions are mostly irrational. They're not making choices because even in this case, how irrational is it for an Armenian to support Trump, like completely be gung-ho for Trump, when, as you said, he ceded the entire Middle East to Turkey? He's ceded all of northern Syria to Turkey. Libya is seeing Turkish troops. So Turkey is in Libya. Turkey's in Syria. Turkey's now in Azerbaijan. And the president who's doing nothing about it, Armenians are still supporting, at least, for now. But it's irrational. But Biden, for most Armenians, Biden is not an option either, and I don't blame them either. What we could do, John, I think what we could do is on a local level, on a state level, we could do things like this. We could, try to influence people on a human-to-human level, because I don't think the government at the national level actually cares. Honestly, they might, but they would have to be. They'd be rolling the dice with Biden. They would be saying, you know what? At least Biden's promising me. Let's put him in there and see if he's gonna, live up to it. I get that would be, I assume, better than Trump, who's not doing anything.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. It's just such a complicated issue from so many different forms, historically and current issues. And regardless of what country you're in, you should care about this because they're humans. That's all there is. And injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. You got to stand up and fight. Hratch, before I let you go, any closing remarks, things that perhaps we missed that you wanted to cover today? And man, just want to say I thank you for your time, your passion, and just the thoroughness, I guess is the right word.
Oh, that wasn't passion. I was dialing that back. That wasn't passion. So I would say the lesson here, even for Americans, look, America's having a hard time right now. America is not in any position to be helping anybody out right now. So I get it. I get it. I completely understand an American saying, look, we're falling apart at the seams ourselves. So I would say this. I would say the lesson to take away is that for every conflict on earth, all right, might makes right. Okay, that's how it's always been. That's how it always will be. It doesn't matter if you're on the side of truth or justice. People don't have inalienable rights. There's no God-given rights. International law is a farce, in which, as Thucydides said, the powerful do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. And you know what? The old Christian church fathers were wrong about a lot of things, but they got one thing right, is that the ruler of the world is the devil. But was that a high enough note? Was that a high enough note to leave on?
Yeah, this is.
I would say, look, might makes right. If you want to put things right, become mighty.
That's deep, man. I love it. Where can people reach out to you if they have questions or conversation? Do you have an email address that we could put out there that you wouldn't mind getting spammed?
I have my, as you know, I'm an author. I have my author, my email. You could go to, my email is Hratch, Hretch, Demiurge, all one word, Demiurge, Hratch Demiurge at Gmail. You could email me there if you want me to give you a pep talk. If you're having a bad day and you want me to make it better, just shoot me an email. You can check out my book. I translated a book from Armenian to English. If you're interested in Armenian literature, that's one thing I could do to keep the Armenian spirit alive. Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
The book's title is Pagan Songs.
And they can find that on Amazon, right?
You can find it on Amazon. It's by a great Armenian poet named Daniel Varujan, who was murdered in the genocide of 1915. And I think that would have been his message too, is that don't get down on yourself. If you want to change things, become strong. No one's going to take pity on you. Take things into your own hands. God isn't going to help us. Become strong.
I love it, man. Well, appreciate your time. And
all right, John.
It was a good time. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.